a land where hesitation meant death. Imagine a cold that doesn't just sting the skin but chews straight through muscle and marrow. Europe and Western Asia swung between endless freezes and rare thaws, where forests stood brittle, the earth locked like iron, rivers sealed under slabs of ice. Picture winters with no cabins, no stacked firewood, no stocked pantry waiting for you. Out there were no safety nets. Neanderthals lived by a rule that left no room for weakness. Keep moving, or don't expect to survive. The herd set the calendar: mammoth, bison, wild horse. And if you missed them, hunger followed. Even water wasn't guaranteed, frozen solid when thirst was greatest, or fouled and dangerous when the ice broke. Every step, every hunt, every fire was a gamble of energy spent against energy gained. Food wasn't just a meal, it was body heat, strength, and one more chance at tomorrow. Neanderthals weren't just stocky cavemen stumbling through the Ice Age. They were survival machines shaped by nature itself. Every detail of their bodies served a purpose. Short limbs conserved precious heat in the frozen winds. Barrel-shaped chests pushed air into lungs built for endurance, while broad noses warmed each icy breath before it reached the core. Their bones were dense, their muscles powerful, strength carried as naturally as skin. Even their vision was specialized. Large eyes and expanded brain centers tuned to twilight hunts and shadowed forests. But this design came with a cost. Muscle burns fuel, and when hunts failed, that furnace of strength became a burden. What made them resilient also made them fragile. Creatures of power in a world that demanded constant, unforgiving appetite. To modern eyes, a hand axe or flint scraper can seem crude, almost laughably simple. But try shaping one yourself, and the brilliance quickly shows. The Neanderthal method, the Levallois technique, wasn't random bashing at stone. It demanded calculation, precision, and a craftsman's patience for angles. And then there was the glue. Birch bark tar, black, sticky, stubborn, may have been the first adhesive ever made. Producing it wasn't luck. It took control of fire, trial and error, and steady practice to create enough to bind stone to wood, transforming sharp rock into a true weapon. This was materials science long before laboratories. Later traces reveal twisted plant fibers, cords, and nets. Small details with enormous impact. In a land of wind and ice, survival wasn't only about strength. It was about foresight, skill, and problem solving. Sometimes, a good knot and a drop of tar meant the difference between eating or freezing. Deep underground, where sunlight never reached, Neanderthals did something extraordinary. They didn't just sit at campfires near cave mouths. They carried flame, effort, and purpose into the pitch-black heart of stone. At Bruniquel Cave in France, archaeologists uncovered rings of stalagmites, massive calcite pillars, broken, hauled, and carefully arranged 176,000 years ago. Imagine the labor, the risk, the determination. One misstep in that darkness could mean a broken leg, or worse. And yet, they persisted. Why? Was it ritual, storage, defense? The answer is still uncertain. What is clear is that this was no accident. It was deliberate construction, born of planning and cooperation. In silence and shadow, they shaped the cave itself into something meaningful. It's a reminder that Neanderthals weren't fumbling beasts in the dark. They were innovators of survival, leaving marks in stone beneath the flicker of firelight. For Neanderthals, hunting wasn't sport. It was survival itself. In the frozen world of the Ice Age, protein alone wasn't enough. The body demanded fat to fuel warmth and endurance. That's why marrow, brains, and organ meats were treated like treasure. Why bones were cracked open with stone tools instead of left to scavengers. The hunt was brutal and close, thrusting spears at towering animals, driving herds into narrow passes, stepping in where one tusk or a single kick could shatter bone. The skeletons left behind tell the story. Healed fractures, worn joints, scars of lives lived in danger. Yet they weren't bound only to the land. At Gibraltar,
Great Spirit.
evidence shows they hauled seals from the surf and gathered shellfish, proving adaptability and courage. Neanderthals were not clumsy cave dwellers from old cartoons. They were skilled providers, enduring a world that always fought back hard. For Neanderthals, home wasn't just a cave wall or a patch of cleared ground. It was any place where fire could hold back the night. Their shelters ranged from deep limestone chambers to hide-and-bone frames pinned with heavy stones, ready to be moved as the herds shifted across the plains. At the center of it all was the hearth, a circle of light and warmth, the fragile line that kept chaos on the other side of the dark. Around it, daily life found its rhythm. Scrapers and awls lay near the hides, flint chips scattered where skilled hands worked stone. Waste was carried downwind so predators wouldn't nose too close. These weren't random camps. Generations returned to the same places, season after season, wearing grooves of memory into stone and soil. Temporary, yes, but also enduring. Fire, after all, was not just survival, it was belonging. To understand who Neanderthals really were, don't just study their weapons, look at their care for one another. In Shanidar Cave, Iraq, the remains of one individual tell a striking story. His body bore crushed bones, damaged joints, and fading vision. Yet he lived for years beyond injuries that would have ended him alone. He survived because others made room for him, sharing food, shelter, and protection. This wasn't an exception, it was a pattern. Across sites, evidence repeats. Lives extended through cooperation. Even their teeth preserve chemical traces of bitter herbs and natural compounds. Salicylic acid, the ancestor of aspirin, and even mold with antibiotic qualities. That knowledge didn't come from books, but from trial, pain, and memory. Neanderthals weren't mindless brutes. They were people who endured hardship together, healing not just with strength, but with solidarity. Strip away the myths, and a haunting question remains. Did Neanderthals give meaning to the objects and gestures they left behind? We will never hear their words, but the evidence suggests they did. At Krapina in Croatia, eagle talons were carefully modified and strung. Not scraps of food, but ornaments, pigments, ochre, and the deliberate placement of the dead. At Shanidar, at La Chapelle aux Saints, hint at rituals that reached beyond survival. The flower burial may remain debated, but repeated interments in chosen spots show intention. Deep in Bruniquel Cave, circles of broken stalagmites carry a symbolic weight we can only guess at. Think of how a ring, a photo, or a keepsake becomes more than an object. It becomes memory, identity, connection. Meaning doesn't need a cathedral. It endures in gestures, in symbols, and in the human need to remember. Neanderthals and modern humans were never just strangers crossing paths. Around 45,000 years ago, our ancestors stepped into their hunting grounds, carrying new strategies, wider networks, and fire-hardened weapons. The record in stone shows overlap, tools blending in the same layers, and also sharp contrasts. But DNA fills in the deeper truth. We mixed. Today, nearly everyone outside Africa carries traces of Neanderthal ancestry, about 1 to 2%. That legacy still shapes how immune systems respond to disease, how skin adapts to climate, how bodies process food. Yet the genetic record also reveals limits. Whole stretches of Neanderthal code disappeared, especially on the X chromosome, suggesting hybrids often faced hidden costs. Across Europe and Asia, Neanderthal groups were small, scattered, sometimes inbred, fragile in number. Into that fragility came Homo sapiens,
1 to 2% of
more
Neanderthal
numerous,
DNA
more connected,
remained in most
and able
modern
to stretch
humans
alliances
outside
across
Africa.
vast horizons. The end of the Neanderthals wasn't a single dramatic event, but a slow scattering of losses. Their populations were small, often cut off from one another, weakened by inbreeding and isolation. At the same time, Homo sapiens built wide networks, trading, innovating, sharing knowledge, and protecting one another. Climate shifts brought punishing extremes, pushing fragile groups past their limits. Then came disaster. About 39,000 years ago, the Campanian Ignimbrite eruption blanketed Europe in ash. Some Neanderthal groups endured, but each setback drained their strength further. Genetics now tells a patchwork story. Some clans absorbed into our lineage, others fading in isolation until silence. Their disappearance wasn't a clean break, but a slow erosion. Decades of pressure, attrition, and retreat, until the world carried their memory only in stone tools, scattered bones, and fragments in our DNA. If this kind of raw, boots-on-the-ground prehistory speaks to you, the grit, the choices, the evidence left in earth and bone, subscribe to Prehistoric Shadows. We cut through myths and go straight to what remains. The scars etched in skeletons, the tar on stone blades, the traces of fire in dark caves. Pull up a seat by the fire, because the story of our ancient world is only just beginning.